Imagine waking up every morning feeling unshakable. No matter what chaos the world throws at you, you remain calm, focused, and in control of your emotions. Sounds impossible, doesn't it? Yet 2,000 years ago, one of history's most powerful rulers, Marcus Aurelius, wrote these words in his private journal: "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. That simple idea became the foundation of Stoicism, a philosophy designed not for ancient emperors, but for everyday people like you and me, struggling to stay grounded in a world that never stops testing our resilience. Think about the last time you felt overwhelmed. Maybe it was a stressful day at work, a personal setback, or just the constant noise of modern life pulling you in a dozen directions. What if you could face those moments with the same unflinching clarity as the Stoics? What if, instead of reacting with frustration or anxiety, you could meet every challenge with deliberate calm and purpose? That's exactly what we're exploring today. This video isn't just about ancient wisdom, it's about practical, actionable habits you can start using right now to build mental fortitude. We're diving into 42 Stoic practices, each one a stepping stone to becoming more resilient, more focused, and more in command of your inner world. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending life doesn't hurt. Stoicism teaches us to see clearly, act wisely, and distinguish between what we can control and what we can't. It's about training your mind like a muscle, so when adversity hits, and it always does, you don't just survive, you thrive. Whether you're dealing with pressure, uncertainty, or self-doubt, these habits will help you rewrite your reflexes, turning obstacles into opportunities. So if you're ready to cultivate a mindset that doesn't buckle under pressure, let's begin this journey together. The path to unshakable resilience starts here. The first light of dawn is your invitation to set the tone for the entire day, not with rushed scrolling or groggy complaints, but with deliberate reflection. This is where the Stoics began, and it's where we'll begin too. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, put it plainly: first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's the essence of morning preparation, defining your purpose before the world defines it for you. Imagine standing at the edge of a quiet morning, just you and your thoughts, asking yourself one powerful question: what will I do with this day, no matter what it brings? That's the Stoic difference, not waiting for perfect conditions, but preparing your mind to meet whatever comes. Seneca, the great Stoic teacher, wrote letters urging his friends to take possession of the day the moment they woke. He didn't mean filling every minute with productivity. He meant claiming ownership of your attention before distractions could steal it. Try this. Before you reach for your phone or dive into the day's demands, pause for just 5 minutes. Sit with a notebook and ask yourself 2 simple questions. What's within my control today, and what's worth my energy? Write down one intention, not a to-do list, but a mindset. Maybe it's patience during a stressful meeting, or curiosity instead of frustration when plans change. This isn't about rigid planning. It's about aligning your inner compass. Here's how it works in practice. Say you're dreading a difficult conversation later in the day. Instead of rehearsing arguments or worrying about outcomes, your morning journaling might focus on what you can control: your tone, your listening, your willingness to understand. The rest, that's not yours to command. This tiny habit trains you to spot the difference between influence and obsession, saving you hours of mental clutter. Think of it as mental stretching before the marathon of the day. Now consider your own mornings. Do they start reactively, with external demands dictating your mood? Or do you carve out even a sliver of time to anchor yourself? You don't need a grand ritual, just a moment of clarity. The Stoics didn't have perfect lives. They had perfected the art of beginning again each day. So tomorrow, before the world rushes in, ask yourself, what kind of person do I choose to be today? The answer might just reshape everything that follows. Now let's talk about one of the most counterintuitive yet powerful Stoic practices, negative visualization, or what the ancients called premeditatio malorum. At first glance, it sounds bleak, deliberately imagining worst-case scenarios. Why would anyone willingly dwell on loss, failure, or hardship? Here's the twist: it's not about pessimism, it's about liberation. Seneca, who weathered exile, political turmoil, and personal tragedy, wrote that we should rehearse in our minds exile, torture, war, shipwreck, not to live in fear, but to disarm fear's grip. By confronting what terrifies us before it happens, we strip it of its power to shock or paralyze us. Take something as common as job insecurity. Modern life ties so much of our identity and stability to our careers. What happens if that vanishes? Instead of avoiding the thought, a Stoic would examine it head-on. Picture this: you lose your job tomorrow. What's the first thing you'd do? Who could you lean on? What skills or side projects could you develop? Suddenly, the monster under the bed isn't so monstrous. You've already walked through the scenario in your mind, so if it happens, you're not blindsided. You're prepared. That's the magic of negative visualization. It turns the unknown into something you've already faced and survived. This practice isn't about expecting disaster, it's about appreciating what you have right now. Seneca urged his friend Lucilius to remember that all we have is on loan. That morning coffee, the laughter of a loved one, even the comfort of a routine, none of it is guaranteed. By mentally letting go of these things, even briefly, you train yourself to cherish them more deeply. It's like holding a fragile glass and imagining it slipping from your hand. You don't want it to break, but acknowledging its fragility makes you handle it with greater care. So here's a challenge: pick one fear that's been lurking in the back of your mind. Maybe it's a health concern, a strained relationship, or a financial worry. Close your eyes and walk through it, not with panic, but with curiosity. What's the real worst that could happen? How would you adapt? You'll likely find that even in that imagined darkness, there are steps forward, resources you'd forgotten, strength you've underestimated. That's the Stoic secret. When you stop running from the shadows, they stop chasing you. Negative visualization isn't about dwelling in darkness. It's about lighting a match so you can see the exits. It's the mental equivalent of a fire drill. You practice so that if the alarm ever sounds, you move with clarity, not chaos. And in that clarity, you find something unexpected, not just resilience, but gratitude. Because when you face the worst and realize you'd still find a way through, the present moment becomes sweeter, and the future, no matter what it holds, feels less frightening. Not everything is in your hands, and that's okay. This simple truth, taught by the Stoic teacher Epictetus 2,000 years ago, might just be the most liberating idea you ever embrace. He called it the dichotomy of control, the radical act of separating your energy into two categories: what you can influence and what you must let go. Picture this: you're stuck in traffic, late for an important meeting. Your grip tightens on the wheel, your pulse races, but honking won't magically clear the road. Epictetus would ask, is this delay within your control? The answer frees you. You can't force the cars to move, but you can choose how you respond, whether to fume or to use the time to breathe, think, or listen to something meaningful. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher emperor, scribbled a reminder to himself in his journals: you always own the option of having no opinion. That's the heart of this practice. Someone criticizes you unfairly. Their words aren't yours to command, but your reaction is. A storm cancels your flight. The weather won't obey your wishes, but your adaptability can. Modern life bombards us with illusions of control, social media likes, perfect outcomes, others' approval. Stoicism cuts through that noise. It's not about giving up. It's about redirecting your effort where it actually matters. Here's a challenge. Grab a sheet of paper and draw a line down the middle. On one side, list things you can't control: a colleague's mood, the past, the stock market. On the other, what you can: your preparation, your kindness, your next action. The moment you do this, something shifts. You stop wasting energy on the unchangeable and start investing in what truly shapes your life. Think of it like a video game where you suddenly realize half the obstacles are just background scenery. You can't interact with them, so you stop trying. That's mental bandwidth reclaimed. Consider how often we torture ourselves over externals. We replay conversations we can't undo, obsess over decisions that aren't ours to make, or agonize over outcomes that depend on countless variables. The Stoics offer a better way. Focus like an archer. You can control your stance, your aim, your release, but once the arrow flies, wind and chance take over. Your job isn't to guarantee the target, it's to perfect the shot. So next time stress creeps in, pause and ask Epictetus' question: is this mine to solve? If not, your only task is to loosen your grip. If it is, act with clarity. This isn't passivity, it's the ultimate empowerment. When you stop fighting the unchangeable, you discover just how much power you've always had. What if every setback, every disappointment, every twist of fate wasn't something to resist but something to embrace? That's the heart of Amor Fati, a Latin phrase meaning love of fate. While the Stoics championed this idea centuries ago, it was Friedrich Nietzsche who later made it famous, calling it his formula for greatness. Imagine standing in a storm and instead of cursing the wind, you spread your arms and laugh. That's Amor Fati in action, not passive resignation, but active acceptance. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. In other words, the obstacle is the path. Consider Seneca, Rome's wealthiest statesman, suddenly exiled to a barren island on false charges. He could have raged against the injustice, but instead he wrote letters describing how exile freed him. No politics, no distractions, just time to think and write. Years later, those letters became some of history's most profound Stoic teachings. His misfortune became his legacy. That's the alchemy of Amor Fati, transforming what seems like a dead end into a detour that leads somewhere unexpected. Now think about your own life. Maybe you missed a promotion, faced a rejection, or watched a carefully laid plan unravel. What if, instead of asking "why me," you asked "what now?" A project falls apart. Does it open time for something better? A relationship ends. Does it create space for growth? This isn't about pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about refusing to let pain dictate your story. The Stoics didn't sugarcoat life. They stared it in the face and said, "Is that all you've got? Here's a challenge. Pick one recent setback, big or small. Maybe it's a cancelled trip, a criticism that stung, or a goal that slipped away. Write it down, then finish this sentence. This happened, and because of it, I can." That tiny shift from despite to because changes everything. Resistance chains you to the past. Acceptance hands you the tools to build the future. Amor Fati isn't magic, it's muscle. The more you practice, the stronger you become. So the next time life throws a curveball, ask yourself, how can I make this my ally? The answer might just surprise you. The ancient Stoics had a peculiar habit. They didn't just endure hardship, they sought it out voluntarily. Why? Because they understood something profound. Comfort is the enemy of resilience. Take Cato the Younger, the Stoic senator who walked barefoot through Rome's icy streets, slept on hard ground even when soft beds were available, and wore plain clothing despite his wealth. This wasn't self-punishment, it was training. By deliberately embracing discomfort, he immunized himself against life's inevitable hardships. Epictetus, born into slavery, put it bluntly, difficulty shows what men are. In other words, you don't discover your strength when life is easy. You discover it when you willingly step into the arena of discomfort. Modern life, with its endless conveniences, has made us soft without us even realizing it. We control the thermostat to avoid a slight chill, order takeout at the first pang of hunger, and scroll endlessly to escape boredom. But here's the paradox: the more we avoid discomfort, the more it controls us. That's why the Stoic practice of voluntary discomfort is so radical and so necessary. It's not about suffering for suffering's sake. It's about reminding yourself that you're tougher than your circumstances. Think of it like a mental vaccine. Small, controlled doses of hardship prepare you for the real thing. Start small. Skip a meal and notice how hunger sharpens your focus. Take a cold shower and observe how your body adapts to the shock. Leave your phone at home during a walk and sit with your thoughts instead of distractions. These aren't tests of endurance, they're experiments in self-mastery. When you choose discomfort, you reclaim power over your reactions. Marcus Aurelius, despite ruling an empire, practiced eating simple soldiers' rations. Why? To remember that he didn't need luxury to be content. Here's the challenge. Pick one uncomfortable act this week, something that stretches you just enough to feel the resistance. Maybe it's waking up 30 minutes earlier, having a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, or spending a day without complaining. The goal isn't to make life harder, it's to prove to yourself that you can handle hard things. Because when you voluntarily face discomfort, the involuntary hardships, the setbacks, the losses, the storms lose their sting. You've already met them on your own terms. The Stoics weren't masochists, they were realists. They knew that life would demand resilience, so they trained for it like athletes. Your turn. What small discomfort will you invite into your life this week? The answer might just be the first step toward unshakable strength. Marcus Aurelius had a secret weapon against daily frustrations, one he used while ruling an empire during war, plague, and betrayal. He called it the view from above, a mental exercise so simple yet profound that modern psychologists now recognize its power. Picture this: you're stuck in traffic, late for an appointment, frustration rising. Now imagine floating up higher, until your car is just a speck on a sprawling city grid. Higher still, until continents shrink to patches of green and blue, and the entire planet becomes a pale blue dot in the cosmos. That meeting you're rushing to, the argument that kept you up last night, from this vantage point, they're barely visible. The emperor wrote in his private journal, "Think of the substance of the whole, how small your share of it." This isn't about dismissing your struggles, it's about seeing them in their true proportion. The coworker who annoyed you, the minor inconvenience that ruined your mood, how much will they matter in a month? A year, a century. The Stoics loved contemplating what they called sympatheia, the interconnectedness of all things. Your life is a single brushstroke in a vast mural stretching across time. Zoom out far enough, and even your greatest triumphs and deepest sorrows become part of a grander pattern. Modern mindfulness practices echo this ancient wisdom. Therapists teach helicopter view techniques to clients overwhelmed by anxiety, urging them to mentally step back and ask, will this matter in 5 years? NASA astronauts describe the overview effect, the life-changing shift in perspective when viewing Earth from space. Suddenly, political borders vanish, and what remains is a fragile, shared home. The Stoics achieved this same shift without leaving the ground, using only their imagination. Try it now. Pick one current worry. Maybe it's a financial strain, a strained relationship, or a professional setback. Close your eyes and pull back mentally, first to your city, then your country, then the spinning earth suspended in black space. Watch as your problem shrinks against the backdrop of infinite time. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died. The same fate awaits us all. Morbid? No, liberating. When you grasp how fleeting your moment truly is, you stop sweating the small stuff and start savoring what matters. The view from above isn't escapism, it's clarity. That project you're obsessing over, it won't be remembered in 200 years, the embarrassment you can't shake. Dust in the wind of time, but here's the beautiful paradox. Realizing this doesn't diminish your life, it amplifies it. When trivial worries lose their grip, you're free to pour your energy into what endures: kindness, growth, moments of connection. The stars above Rome are the same ones you see tonight. What will you do with your brief, brilliant flicker of starlight? Imagine holding a mirror up to your thoughts, not to judge them, but to understand them. That's the power of Stoic journaling, a practice Marcus Aurelius never intended for publication. His meditations were private pages where an emperor wrestled with his own humanity, writing reminders like, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you ever dig." Those words weren't philosophy, they were therapy. 2,000 years later, science confirms what the Stoics knew. Writing down your experiences isn't just record keeping, it's rewiring. Studies show journaling reduces stress, sharpens decision-making, and even strengthens immune function. But the Stoic approach isn't about dumping emotions onto paper, it's about mining them for wisdom. Start with this nightly ritual. Take 10 minutes to answer 3 questions. First, what challenged me today? Not just external events, but your internal reactions. Did frustration hijack your patience? Did anxiety whisper lies? Second, what did I learn from it? Maybe a missed deadline revealed your perfectionism, or a friend's criticism exposed a tender spot. Third, how can I apply this tomorrow? This turns insight into action. For example, today I snapped at my partner over something trivial. I learned that hunger magnifies my irritability. Tomorrow I'll pause before responding when I'm hungry. That's Stoic journaling, transforming daily stumbles into stepping stones. The magic lies in consistency. Seneca compared self-reflection to tending a garden. You must daily hoe your weeds. His evening routine included revisiting the day's interactions, not to dwell on regrets but to spot patterns. Did he speak hastily, flatter when he should have been honest? This isn't self-criticism, it's self-awareness in its purest form. Modern psychology calls it metacognition, the ability to observe your own thinking. Journaling builds that muscle. Try this tonight. Grab any notebook and write one lesson from your day in the form of a letter to yourself. No filters, no polish. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." Your journal is where you choose the dye. Whether it's 3 sentences or 3 pages, the act of putting pen to paper forces clarity. Chaos becomes coherent. Over time, you'll trace your growth not in grand epiphanies, but in small, steady shifts. The day you didn't take the bait in an argument, the moment you caught yourself before complaining. Your life is already teaching you. The question is, are you taking notes? There's a Stoic practice so counterintuitive that most people initially recoil from it. Yet those who embrace it often call it the most liberating habit of all. It's called Memento Mori, the art of remembering your own mortality. Seneca, the philosopher who tutored Nero, wrote fiercely about this in his letters. It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. He wasn't being morbid, he was issuing a wake-up call. modern culture treats death like a distant rumor, something that happens to other people someday far away. We fill our calendars with trivial distractions as if time were infinite, but the Stoics knew better. They kept skulls on their desks not as decorations but as mirrors. Every glance whispered, "This breath, this moment, it's not guaranteed. What will you do with it? Consider how differently we'd act if we truly internalized this." That project you've been postponing, the grudge you've been nursing, the conversation you've been avoiding, suddenly, they're not just items on a to-do list, they're urgent, vital, alive. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think." Notice he didn't say dwell on death, he said let it clarify. When you stop pretending you'll live forever, you start living with intention. Here's the paradox: confronting death doesn't shrink your life, it expands it. Think of a sunset. Its beauty is inseparable from its fleetingness. If the sky stayed orange forever, you'd stop noticing. Mortality is the frame that gives meaning to the painting. Seneca urged his friend Lucilius to live as if each day were a separate life. Begin at once to live and count each day as a whole life. That's why the Stoics didn't fear death, they feared squandering life. Try this daily prompt. If today were my last, how would I act? Not with reckless abandon, but with distilled purpose. Would you waste hours scrolling? Or would you call someone you love? Would you nitpick flaws or savor ordinary wonders? The taste of coffee, the sound of laughter. This isn't about grand gestures, it's about micro shifts in attention. The writer Annie Dillard captured it perfectly. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. Modern avoidance of death robs us of this clarity. We numb ourselves with busyness, chasing promotions and likes as if they'll grant us immortality. But the Stoics whisper a radical alternative. Let the certainty of an end sharpen the beauty of your now. When you stop hiding from death, you start seeing life, truly seeing it for the first time. Imagine walking through a crowded marketplace in ancient Athens when a stranger suddenly shouts an insult about your appearance. Instead of anger or shame, you feel nothing, no sting, no urge to retaliate. That's the power of premeditatio contumely, the Stoic practice of rehearsing insults before they happen. Epictetus, who endured slavery before becoming a philosopher, trained his students with brutal simplicity. If someone speaks badly of you, that's their problem, not yours. Their opinion doesn't change your character any more than a shadow changes the shape of a tree. He wasn't teaching indifference, he was building emotional armor. Fast forward to today's digital marketplace, social media, where criticism lands like arrows from invisible archers. A harsh comment about your work, a snide remark on your beliefs, even a stranger's dismissive emoji can hijack your mood for hours. The Stoic antidote: preemptive rejection. Picture this: before posting that vulnerable thought or creative project, you mentally list every possible negative response. This is stupid. Who cares? You're wrong. By imagining the worst reactions upfront, you drain them of their power. It's like reading spoilers before watching a movie. The plot twists lose their shock value. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, kept a journal entry that read, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." Notice he didn't write this to fuel cynicism, but to neutralize surprise. He anticipated human nature like a sailor anticipates storms, prepared, not paranoid. Modern psychology calls this stress inoculation, and studies show it works. Athletes visualize failure to perform better under pressure. Soldiers train for worst-case scenarios to stay calm in chaos. The Stoics were pioneers of this mindset. Here's your challenge: grab a pen and write down one insult or criticism you deeply fear hearing. Maybe it's "you're not good enough, you'll never succeed," or "everyone thinks you're fake." Now beneath it write epictetus truth. "This is just noise, it doesn't define me." Fold the paper and tuck it away. The next time someone's words hit a nerve, remember, you've already rejected them. You've rehearsed this moment. The goal isn't to become emotionless. It's to separate valid feedback from emotional shrapnel. Even the harshest critique can't shake you when you've already stood in the courtroom of your own mind and declared yourself free. There's a quiet revolution happening in how we think about productivity, one the Stoics saw coming 2,000 years ago. While modern life equates busyness with importance, the Stoics measured action by a different standard: virtue. Marcus Aurelius, who governed an empire while writing profound meditations by candlelight, captured this perfectly. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Notice he didn't say appear to be one or post about being one, he said be. That's the discipline of action, aligning your efforts with your deepest values so completely that the doing becomes its own reward. Consider how often we confuse motion with progress. You might spend hours answering emails, attending meetings, or ticking off to-do list items, only to end the day feeling strangely hollow. The Stoics would ask, did these actions serve something greater than mere activity? Epictetus drew a line between busy and meaningful work with his famous metaphor: if you try to be both a philosopher and a banker, you'll be neither. He wasn't dismissing practical responsibilities. He was urging us to distinguish between what's urgent and what's essential. Here's where modern life desperately needs Stoic clarity. Every day we're pulled in countless directions. Social media demands our attention, workplaces reward performative hustle, and culture glorifies packed schedules. But what if you pause to audit your actions like a Stoic? Take a sheet of paper and divide it into 2 columns. On one side, list tasks that genuinely align with your values: helping a colleague grow, creating something meaningful, investing in relationships. On the other, note activities driven by obligation, vanity, or distraction. The gap between these columns is where the discipline of action begins. Marcus Aurelius modeled this in his own life. Despite ruling Rome during war and plague, he wrote, "It's ridiculous how rarely people think about what they actually do each day, yet imagine they'll achieve something grand." He understood that legacy isn't built in dramatic gestures, but in daily choices. A soldier doesn't become brave in one battle. Courage is the sum of small acts of integrity. A parent's love isn't proven in a single moment, but in countless unseen sacrifices. The Stoic approach flips modern productivity on its head. Instead of asking how much did I do, ask how much did I grow. Instead of tracking hours worked, measure moments where you chose patience over irritation, generosity over self-interest, or truth over convenience. This week, try this. For every task, pause and whisper Marcus's question: does this serve the person I aspire to be? You might cancel meetings that could be emails, say no to projects that drain your soul, or rediscover the quiet joy of doing good without an audience. Discipline of action isn't about doing more, it's about doing what matters. When you stop chasing external validation and start acting from inner integrity, something shifts. You work not for applause, but because the work itself is worthy. And in that shift, you find a kind of freedom no productivity hack can offer: the freedom of knowing your days aren't just full, but meaningful. Picture a priceless vase shattering on the floor, your gasp, the rush of dismay, the sinking feeling of loss. Now imagine Epictetus standing beside you, utterly calm, asking, what did you truly lose? Clay and glaze, that's Stoic indifference in action, not apathy but clarity. To the Stoics, indifference weren't things that didn't matter, they were things that shouldn't control your peace. Wealth, reputation, even health, these externals are like the vase, useful, pleasant, absolutely, essential to your worth or happiness, not even slightly. Modern life screams the opposite. Social media equates followers with worth, advertisements tie identity to possessions, and culture rewards status like it's oxygen. But here's the paradox the Stoics uncovered. The more you chase these indifferents as if they're necessities, the more they own you. Epictetus, born into slavery, put it bluntly. Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants. He wasn't preaching poverty, he was offering freedom. When you stop believing you need the vase to be whole, its breaking becomes a sound, not a catastrophe. Consider how differently we treat wants versus needs. You might want a bigger house, but do you need it to live virtuously? You might want praise, but does its absence diminish your character? The Stoic exercise isn't about rejecting comfort, it's about detaching your self-worth from it. Marcus Aurelius, ruling from a palace, wrote reminders like, "You can strip away the robe of office, the title, the prestige. What remains is just a human being." That's the core of indifference, recognizing that externals are costumes, not the actor. Here's a challenge. List 3 things you currently overvalue. Maybe it's your job title, the number on a scale, or the car in your driveway. Now ask, if this vanished tomorrow, who would I still be? The answer reveals your bedrock. Material comforts come and go, but your capacity for courage, kindness, and resilience, that's unbreakable. The vase is already broken, the Stoics whisper. Not to depress you, but to free you. When you stop clutching indifference like lifelines, you discover something extraordinary. You were never holding them up, they were weighing you down. A red light flashes in your brain, someone cut you off in traffic. A coworker dismisses your idea, your child spills juice on your laptop. In that split second before you react, there's a sliver of space most people never notice. The Stoics called it the prosauche, the sacred pause between what happens to you and how you choose to respond. Seneca, who wrote an entire treatise on anger, described it like this: "There is no more stupefying thing than anger, nothing more bent on its own strength. If it succeeds, it becomes more furious than ever." His warning wasn't about suppressing emotion. It was about reclaiming that critical gap before emotion hijacks your reason. Think of the last time frustration steamrolled you. Maybe you snapped at a barista for a slow order or fired off a harsh text you later regretted. What if, in that heated moment, you'd inserted just 5 seconds of silence? Traffic offers the perfect training ground. You're stuck in gridlock, late for a meeting, your grip tightening on the wheel. The Stoic move isn't to suppress annoyance, it's to interrogate it. Before honking or muttering, pause and ask, will this change the traffic? The answer's always no. Then ask, what will acting on this frustration cost me? Your peace, your dignity, maybe even your safety. That tiny gap when leverage transforms reactions into responses. Modern neuroscience confirms the Stoics were onto something. When triggered, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, can flood your body with stress hormones in milliseconds. But here's the catch. It takes about 6 seconds for your prefrontal cortex, the rational decision maker, to catch up. Those 6 seconds are your Stoic pause. Seneca compared anger to a falling boulder. Once it starts rolling, it's nearly impossible to stop. But in that first tremor, you still have a choice. Try this today. Pick one predictable trigger. Maybe it's slow Wi-Fi, a noisy neighbor, or a family member's habit that grates on you. Before reacting, physically stop. Count 5 breaths. In that space, ask Seneca's question, is this worth trading my tranquility for? You'll start noticing something revolutionary most things aren't. The coworker who interrupts you, they're not robbing your time, they're offering a chance to practice patience. the delayed flight, an invitation to read or reflect. This isn't about becoming a passive observer of life. It's about shifting from reflex to choice. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire by reminding himself, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That power lies in the pause, so the next time life presses your buttons, remember, you're not a vending machine. No one gets to insert a coin and demand a reaction. You decide what comes next. There's a hidden superpower in noticing the steam rising from your morning coffee, not just drinking it, but truly seeing it. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who commanded legions, found wonder in the simplest things. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love. That's the Stoic secret to contentment. Gratitude isn't just a feeling, it's a lens that transforms the ordinary into the extraordinary. While modern life trains us to chase the next big thing, the promotion, the vacation, the milestone, the Stoics practiced finding gold in the gravel. A warm bed, a stranger's smile, the way sunlight filters through leaves, these aren't small joys, they're the foundation of an unshakable inner peace. Consider how often dissatisfaction creeps in when we fixate on what's missing. Your phone isn't the latest model. Your home isn't as spacious as a friend's. But the Stoics would ask, what if you woke up tomorrow with only what you thanked someone for today? That's the twist. Gratitude isn't passive appreciation. It's active resistance against the endless hunger for more. Seneca, who lived through exile and political turmoil, wrote letters reminding his friends, "No one confines their unhappiness to the present. We amplify pain by dwelling on lacks while taking gifts for granted." The remedy, a nightly ritual as simple as it is profound. List 3 specific things you're grateful for, no matter how mundane. Not my family, but the way my daughter laughed when the dog licked her face. Not my job, but the colleague who brought me tea when I was stressed. Specificity is the scalpel that cuts through indifference. Science backs this ancient wisdom. Studies show gratitude journaling rewires the brain to scan for positives, reducing anxiety and boosting resilience. But the Stoics took it further. They saw gratitude as armor. Epictetus, who owned nothing but a wooden cup which he famously broke to prove his detachment, taught, "He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has." Every time you note a blessing, you're stocking your mental fortress against future storms. Here's your challenge. Before bed tonight, grab any scrap of paper and scribble one tiny, easily overlooked gift from your day. The bus arriving on time, the crispness of fresh sheets, the way your breath steadies when you pause between tasks. Then, place it where you'll see it tomorrow, a pocket, your wallet, beside your toothbrush. Let it be your first reminder that joy isn't found in grand events, but in the quiet spaces between them. The Stoics didn't wait for perfect lives to be grateful. They mined gratitude to perfect their lives. Your turn. What ordinary miracle will you thank today? Seneca, the philosopher who dined with emperors yet slept on a hard cot, left us a radical definition of wealth. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. Think about that for a moment. In a world where ads whisper you need this and social media screams they have that, the Stoic alternative isn't deprivation, it's liberation. While modern minimalism often focuses on decluttering physical space, Stoic subtraction cuts deeper. It's not just about owning fewer things, it's about needing fewer things to feel whole. Picture 2 travelers, one straining under a heavy pack, convinced each new trinket will lighten the load, the other walking freely, having left behind everything but essentials. The Stoics ask, who's truly rich? Epictetus, who knew true poverty as a slave, put it bluntly, freedom isn't secured by filling your coffers, but by emptying your wants. That's the twist. Consumerism promises freedom through accumulation, while Stoicism delivers it through release. Consider your smartphone. It's not the device itself that drains your peace, but the unchecked belief that you must check it constantly. The same goes for your closet, your calendar, even your relationships. Subtraction isn't loss. It's the art of spotting the chains you've mistaken for jewelry. Here's where Stoicism outshines modern minimalism. While decluttering tips often stop at keep only what sparks joy, the Stoics probe further. Does this possession spark dependency? Marcus Aurelius, despite his imperial riches, wrote, "How much more grievous are the consequences of anger than the causes of anger? Swap anger for acquisition, and the lesson holds." That trendy kitchen gadget you never use, it's not just taking up cabinet space, it's whispering that you're inadequate without it. Try this experiment today. Walk through your home and pick one item that represents optional rather than essential. Maybe it's that sweater you keep out of guilt because it was a gift, or the app on your phone that feeds distraction rather than purpose. Don't just set it aside. Ask Seneca's question, if I lost this tomorrow, would I still be me? The answer might surprise you. True wealth isn't measured by what fills your hands, but by what no longer holds your heart hostage. The modern world confuses having with being. The Stoics offer a corrective. Every possession should either serve you or leave you. So what will you subtract today, not as punishment, but as proclamation that you, not your things, are enough? Marcus Aurelius faced rebellion, betrayal, and plague, yet his private journals reveal not despair, but a startling perspective. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That simple phrase, "the obstacle is the way," distills one of Stoicism's most explosive truths. The very barriers we curse often contain the blueprint for our growth. Consider Thomas Edison's laboratory burning to the ground in 1914. Flames consumed years of research, prototypes worth millions. Reporters rushed to the scene, expecting devastation. Instead, they found the 67-year-old inventor watching calmly, then turning to his son. "Go get your mother and all her friends. They'll never see a fire like this again." The next morning, Edison rebuilt not just his lab, but his vision. The fire had obliterated outdated designs, forcing innovation. Within months, he delivered breakthroughs that shaped modern sound recording. What others saw as ruin, he recognized as ruthless editing. Seneca, exiled to Corsica's barren rocks, wrote letters that reframed adversity as the universe's strictest teacher. Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. Notice he didn't say despite hardship, he said because of it. A gymnast doesn't develop balance on flat ground. A sailor doesn't learn navigation in calm seas. Your current struggle, the project that keeps failing, the rejection that stings, the limitation that frustrates isn't a detour from your path, it is the path. The weight you're lifting is shaping muscles you'll need later. Here's how to practice this alchemy. Pick one obstacle you're facing right now. Maybe it's a financial constraint forcing creativity, a criticism highlighting blind spots, or a delay creating space for refinement. Write it down, then complete Seneca's sentence. "This is training me to," a startup founder whose funding fell through might write. "This is training me to bootstrap and truly understand my customers." A writer facing rejection could note, "This is training me to hone my voice and find the right audience." The obstacle isn't just something to overcome, it's the whetstone sharpening your edge. History's greatest innovators didn't succeed because they avoided barriers. They became resourceful by necessity. No ink, Picasso used charcoal. No piano. Mozart composed for whatever instruments were available. The Stoics whisper a liberating truth. Your limitations aren't cages, they're the guardrails nudging you toward undiscovered strengths. So the next time you hit resistance, ask Marcus's question, how can this obstacle serve me? The answer might just reveal the way forward. Epictetus once warned his students, you must watch over your words like a sentry guarding a fortress gate. For the Stoics, speech wasn't just communication, it was a moral act. Every sentence carried weight, either reinforcing truth or spreading chaos. Imagine walking through ancient Athens' bustling agora, where philosophers debated under olive trees while merchants haggled and gossips whispered. The difference between them wasn't just topic but intent. One sought understanding, the other sought sensation. Fast forward to today's digital agora, social media threads, group chats, office break rooms, and the challenge remains. Will your words build bridges or burn them? Marcus Aurelius journaled about this daily. Ask yourself, is this necessary? Not just the big speeches or heartfelt confessions, but the offhand comments, the venting sessions, the just joking remarks. Modern neuroscience confirms what the Stoics sensed. Language physically rewires brains, yours and others. Gossip triggers cortisol spikes in listeners. Kind words release oxytocin. Your speech isn't neutral, it's neurochemical. Seneca took this further, advising friends to let silence be your refuge until your words can improve upon it. That's Stoic brevity, not saying less but wasting less. Try an experiment tomorrow. For 12 waking hours, speak only when your words meet 3 criteria: they're true, necessary, and kind. Not as rigid rules, but as filters. Before commenting on a coworker's mistake, ask, will this help them improve? Before joining lunchroom chatter about someone's personal life, consider, does this serve anyone? You'll quickly spot how much habitual speech exists just to fill air. The Stoics called this lalia, empty talk that dilutes your integrity like rain eroding stone. Here's the twist: intentional silence isn't about suppression. It's about creating space for substance. Epictetus, who endured slavery before teaching emperors, knew powerlessness firsthand. His warning cuts deep. If you pour dirty water into a clear spring, you lose both. Your mind is that spring. Every careless word clouds it twice: first when spoken, again when remembered. But purposeful speech, that's where freedom lies. When you stop explaining yourself to those who won't listen, apologizing for boundaries, or lending your voice to noise, you reclaim something priceless: your attention. The next time your phone buzzes with a juicy rumor or a meeting veers into complaint, channel Zeno, the founder of Stoicism. He earned respect not by speaking often, but by making each word land like a struck bell. Ask yourself, is this conversation a garden I'm tending or a fire I'm feeding? Then choose accordingly. After all, the unguarded mouth leaks more than words, it spills your peace. As the sun dips below the horizon and the day's noise fades, Seneca would light a single candle and perform what he called his evenly balanced reckoning, a nightly audit of the soul. Not to dwell on regrets, but to distill wisdom from the raw material of lived experience. Picture him unrolling a scroll, not to record events, but to examine their meaning. Where did I act with courage? Where did fear steer me off course? This wasn't self-criticism. It was liberation through clarity. While modern life encourages us to numb out with screens before sleep, the Stoics chose a different path, one that transformed bedtime into a masterclass in self-awareness. Start with Seneca's first question. What did I do well today? Not grand achievements, but subtle victories, the moment you paused before reacting to provocation, the small kindness you offered without expecting praise, the task you completed with full attention despite distractions. Modern psychology calls this positive recall, and studies show it strengthens neural pathways for resilience. But Seneca went deeper. He sought to spot patterns in these victories. Did patience come easier when you'd eaten well? Did creativity flow after a morning walk? These observations become your personal blueprint for growth. Now turn to the mirror question, what could I improve? The Stoic twist here is crucial. This isn't about guilt but curiosity. Maybe you interrupted a colleague mid-thought or spent an hour scrolling when tired instead of resting. The goal isn't to flagellate yourself, it's to spot the gap between intention and action. Epictetus framed this as separating the hand from the puppet, seeing where external habits pulled your strings instead of your inner wisdom guiding the motion. The final question cuts to the core. Did I align with virtue today? In modern terms, substitute virtue with values. Did your choices reflect who you aspire to be? A Stoic wouldn't ask if you hit sales targets, but whether you treated clients with integrity. Not if you crossed items off a to-do list, but whether those tasks served something larger than ego. Marcus Aurelius ended his days by tracing his actions back to 4 cardinal virtues. Wisdom did I see clearly, courage did I act despite fear, justice did I honor others' dignity, and temperance did I resist excess. Try this tonight. Set a phone reminder for 30 minutes before bed. Grab any notebook, no fancy journal required, and answer these 3 questions in just 5 minutes. Keep it raw and real. The magic lies in the habit, not the eloquence. You might notice, as Seneca did, that most missteps stem from forgetting what's truly within your control. Or that your best moments emerged when you stopped trying to impress and started listening deeply. This practice works because it leverages what neuroscientists call the recollection effect. Reviewing experiences shortly before sleep enhances memory consolidation. But the Stoics discovered something even more profound. By ending each day with conscious reflection, you plant seeds for tomorrow's growth. The Roman statesman Cato the Younger took this further, reportedly reviewing his day while walking home, asking himself, "What dead weight can I leave on this road before stepping into my house?" Your evening review isn't a report card, it's a conversation with your wisest self. Some nights you'll uncover gems, maybe you navigated a conflict with surprising grace. Other nights you'll spot recurring distractions that quietly drain your days. Both are equally valuable. As Seneca wrote to his friend Lucilius, the unexamined life isn't just unworthy, it's unintelligible. When you make this ritual yours, you'll find sleep comes easier, not because the day was perfect, but because you've released its weight and distilled its lessons. Tomorrow starts tonight. Picture a basketball player at the free throw line, sweaty palms, roaring crowd, championship on the line. He bends his knees, releases the ball, and misses. Now here's the Stoic question, did he fail? Epictetus, the philosopher who compared life to a game of dice, would say no, provided he'd practiced with discipline and shot with full presence. The outcome, that belongs to fate. Some things are up to us, he taught, and some things are not. Your effort, yours to command, the scoreboard, never fully yours. This radical shift from obsessing over results to honoring the integrity of your attempt is the heart of Stoic detachment. Marcus Aurelius, who faced battlefield losses despite meticulous planning, scribbled a reminder in his journal, "The cucumber is bitter. Then throw it away. There are brambles in the path, then go around. That's all you need to know." Notice what he didn't say. Don't curse the cucumber. Don't weep over the brambles. Just act wisely and move on. Modern life, with its cult of achievement, inverts this wisdom. We tie our worth to college acceptances, promotions, like outcomes tangled in countless variables beyond our control. The Stoic alternative: pour everything into your craft, then release your grip on the reception. Consider how artists and athletes embody this. A novelist might spend years on a book that flops commercially, yet treasure the dawn hours when sentences flowed like music. A runner sidelined by injury still cherishes the rhythm of training, the burn of muscles pushing limits. Even in failure, there's a thread of victory, the unshakable knowledge that you showed up fully. The irony, this very detachment often elevates performance. Studies of flow state reveal that peak creativity and skill emerge not from clinging to results, but from immersion in the process. Here's your challenge. Recall a project or pursuit where you loved the doing more than the ending. Maybe it was a hobby you practiced without plans to monetize, a meal cooked just for the joy of chopping and stirring, or a conversation where you listened deeply without strategizing responses. That's the Stoic sweet spot where effort becomes its own reward. The next time you fixate on an outcome, a job application, a difficult conversation, pause and ask Epictetus's question, what part of this is truly mine? Your preparation, your intention, your courage to act, those are your domain. The rest, let it be. Detachment isn't indifference, it's the art of investing deeply while holding lightly. Like a gardener who tends each seedling with care, then trusts the sun and rain to do their part, your job isn't to control the harvest, it's to love the planting. Imagine someone cutting in front of you in line, or a colleague taking credit for your idea in a meeting. That flash of heat rising in your chest is instinct. But here's the Stoic countermove, a smile. Not a passive grin, but a deliberate choice to disarm tension with unexpected grace. Seneca, who faced Emperor Nero's unpredictability daily, wrote, "The best way to avenge yourself is to refuse to become like the one who wronged you." Then he took it further. He advised laughter, not mockery, but the kind of levity that shrinks conflict down to size. Picture a Roman senator hurling insults only to be met with genuine amusement. The insult loses its sting when the target refuses to play along. Modern psychology backs this ancient tactic. When researchers at the University of Kansas studied forced smiling during stressful tasks, they found something startling. Even artificial smiles lowered heart rates and cortisol levels. Your facial expressions don't just reflect emotions, they shape them. A smirk at a rude driver won't change their behavior, but it rewires your nervous system, signaling that this isn't a threat worth your peace. Try this today. The next time someone's impatience, pettiness, or carelessness brushes against you, pause just for a breath and let the corners of your mouth lift. Not as surrender, but as sovereignty. That neighbor who always parks too close, smile while leaving a polite note. The customer service rep stuck in scripted apologies. Smile as you ask for their name. You're not ignoring the friction, you're transcending it. Marcus Aurelius called this the art of acquiescence, accepting what you can't control while firmly guiding what you can. Your energy, your focus, your emotional climate. The Stoic smile isn't about plastering on happiness. It's a silent declaration that external chaos doesn't get to dictate your inner world. Seneca put it bluntly, how much better to heal than seek revenge from injury. Healing begins the moment you refuse to let another's actions become your anger. So go ahead, flash those teeth at life's irritations. Watch how often the universe smiles back. Marcus Aurelius kept a list in his journal, not of enemies or tasks, but of mentors. From his father's quiet dignity to his philosophy teacher's razor-sharp logic, he meticulously recorded their virtues like a jeweler appraising gems. Take what you've learned from each and move forward, he wrote. This wasn't hero worship, it was strategic self-development. The Stoics didn't just admire role models, they reverse-engineered excellence. Picture an ancient Roman scroll unfurled, its margins filled with notes like, "Rusticus showed me how to debate without ego," or "Apollonius taught me to eat simply even at feasts." Every interaction became a masterclass. Modern culture often reduces role models to distant icons, historical figures, or celebrities we'll never meet. But the Stoics worked differently. They studied people in their immediate orbit, the neighbor who weathered bankruptcy with grace, the soldier who shared rations without complaint. Epictetus, who himself became a role model despite his enslaved origins, urged students to spot the seeds of greatness in ordinary lives. When you start looking, mentors appear everywhere. The barrister who remembers every regular's order attentiveness, the co-worker who admits mistakes freely, humility, even fictional characters whose choices resonate. Here's the practice. Choose one person, living, historical, or fictional, whose traits you want to absorb. Not their entire persona, but specific qualities. Marcus didn't try to replicate his teachers' careers. He distilled their best habits. Maybe you admire your grandmother's patience during chaos or a novelist's discipline in writing daily. List 3 precise traits, then ask, how would this virtue show up in my world today? If you chose a poet's creativity, your version might mean brainstorming solutions at work instead of defaulting to routine. If it's a colleague's calm under pressure, you might practice measured breathing before meetings. The Stoic twist: role models aren't just for inspiration, they're mirrors. When Seneca wrote letters to his friend Lucilius, he often reflected, what would Cato do in this situation? But then came the crucial pivot, and what stops me from doing likewise? That question exposes the gap between admiration and action. A musician might idolize a virtuoso's skill, but the real growth begins when they ask, am I willing to practice scales for 3 hours daily like they did? Try this tonight. Sketch 2 columns on a page. On the left, name 3 people you respect. On the right, note 1 concrete action each would likely take in a challenge you're facing. A Stoic teacher might pause before reacting to criticism. A compassionate nurse might listen fully before offering advice. Then, here's where the magic happens. Circle 1 action you'll borrow tomorrow. Not as imitation, but as applied wisdom. Marcus's mentors weren't perfect. He noted their flaws alongside their strengths. The point wasn't to find flawless guides, but to collect fragments of excellence like mosaic tiles, assembling them into your own masterpiece of character. Your role models are already around you, waiting to be studied. The only question is, whose virtues will you adopt next? There's a reason ancient kings inscribed, "This too shall pass," on their rings. It's the ultimate Stoic antidote to both euphoria and despair. Epictetus, who watched Rome burn and rebuild, put it bluntly, everything changes, nothing perishes. He wasn't offering empty comfort. He was pointing to a law as reliable as gravity. The promotion that feels like your crowning achievement, it will fade into routine. The heartbreak that convinces you you'll never love again, its edges will soften with time. Modern neuroscience confirms this. Our brains are wired to adapt, a phenomenon called hedonic adaptation. That new car smell dissipates, the sting of rejection dulls. The Stoics didn't just observe this truth, they weaponized it against suffering. Consider a breakup. In the raw aftermath, it's easy to believe the pain is permanent, that you'll never laugh freely or trust again. But here's what the Stoics understood. The very intensity of your grief proves its temporariness. Emotions are like storms. They rage precisely because they can't last. Marcus Aurelius, who buried 8 children, wrote, "Soon you'll be ashes or bones, a mere name at best, and even that is just a sound, an echo." At first glance, this seems morbid. But read closer. He's highlighting the absurdity of clinging to anything in a universe where even mountains erode. Your ex's cruel words, they'll dissolve like smoke. The job rejection that crushed your confidence. In 5 years, you'll struggle to recall the hiring manager's name. Try this exercise. Picture a hardship from your past that once felt insurmountable. Maybe it was a failed exam, a financial crisis, or a friendship's betrayal. Now notice, you're here, you breathed through it, the world kept turning. Epictetus would nod and say, What you're facing now is no different. Modern therapists call this temporal distancing, the practice of viewing current pain through the lens of your future self. The Stoics took it further by applying it to joy too. That vacation high, let it delight you without deluding you into thinking it'll last. Here's the twist. Impermanence isn't just a comfort for hard times, it's a wake-up call for good ones. Seneca warned, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. We amplify future disasters that never arrive while taking present gifts for granted. The fix: when savoring a perfect morning sunlight through the curtains, the aroma of fresh coffee, pause and whisper, this won't last, not to spoil it, but to deepen your presence. The transient nature of things is what makes them precious, so the next time stress grips you, borrow the Stoics' time travel trick. Project forward 6 months, 6 years, 60 years. That problem consuming you now, will it even register? The answer isn't nihilism, it's liberation. The wave that feels like it will drown you is already receding. All you have to do is keep your head above water until it does. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, would periodically ditch his silk robes, dismiss his servants, and sleep on a thin mat with only stale bread to eat. He called it trial poverty, a voluntary plunge into discomfort to immunize himself against fear. The goal wasn't self-punishment, it was liberation. By temporarily stripping away luxuries, he proved to himself that happiness didn't hinge on them. Set aside a certain number of days, he wrote, during which you shall be content with the scantiest food and the cheapest clothing. Think of it as a fire drill for the soul, practicing scarcity so real lack can't catch you unprepared. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic who taught Epictetus, took it further. The easiest way to endure poverty is to stop resenting it. His students, rich and poor alike, were ordered to live like peasants for weeks, cooking over open fires, mending their own clothes, hauling water. The wealthy complained until they noticed something strange. Their minds felt sharper, their sleep deeper, their laughter louder. Luxury, they discovered, often numbs more than it nourishes. Here's your challenge: try 24 hours without modern comforts. No takeout, no streaming, no thermostat adjustments. Wear your plainest clothes, eat simple meals: rice, beans, water. Notice what happens when you silence the constant hum of convenience. At first, boredom might claw at you like withdrawal. But sit with it. That restless itch is exactly what the Stoics wanted you to confront. The lie that you need more to be content. The magic happens in the aftermath. When you return to your usual routines, the ordinary becomes extraordinary. A hot shower feels like a blessing. A fresh apple tastes like a feast. Seneca's trial wasn't about rejecting wealth, it was about breaking its spell. Because the less you fear losing, the more boldly you live. So this weekend, step into voluntary scarcity. You might just find that poverty, when chosen, feels less like lack and more like freedom. Your spouse says something cutting in an argument, and your body tenses before your brain even processes the words. That's the moment the Stoics called the pause, the split second between provocation and response where your freedom lies. Epictetus, who endured slavery before teaching emperors, put it bluntly: it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Notice he didn't say don't feel, he said choose your next move. Think of a chess player who, instead of impulsively grabbing a piece, leans back to study the board. That's Stoic conflict in action, recognizing that every heated exchange is a game where the real victory isn't proving a point, but preserving your integrity. Picture a typical family dinner where politics hijacks the conversation. Your uncle makes a comment that makes your jaw clench, the automatic reaction. Interrupting, counterattacking, or stewing in silence. The Stoic alternative: breathe just once long enough to ask Epictetus's question: is this impression worth acting on? An impression to the Stoics wasn't the comment itself, but your interpretation of it. The words, "you're too idealistic," could be an insult or an invitation to clarify. The pause is where you reclaim the power to decide. Here's how it works neurologically. When triggered, your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, can hijack your prefrontal cortex, the rational decision maker, for up to 6 seconds. Those 6 seconds are your Stoic pause. Marcus Aurelius, who faced constant political sabotage, wrote in his journal, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." In modern terms, don't let someone else's tone dictate yours. A study from the University of California found that couples who waited just 20 seconds before responding during conflicts resolved disputes 40% faster. The Stoics would nod. They knew that silence isn't surrender, it's strategy. Try this today. In your next disagreement, physicalize the pause. Set down your fork. Put your phone face down. Even say aloud, "Let me think about that for a second." That tiny space breaks the spell of reactivity. Seneca, who navigated Nero's court without losing his head, advised, "Speak only when your words are more valuable than silence." Sometimes the strongest reply is listening so fully that the other person hears their own words anew. The Stoics didn't avoid conflict. They mastered it by refusing to be puppets of impulse. So next time tension flares, remember, the gap between provocation and response is where your true power waits. And in that gap, you'll find something unexpected, not just control, but clarity. Marcus Aurelius, the emperor who commanded armies and shaped history, found poetry in peeling an orange. Not just eating it, peeling it. Noticing the spray of citrus when his thumbnail pierced the rind, the stickiness on his fingers, the way each segment burst with sunlight captured in pulp. This wasn't mindfulness in the modern, perfumed sense. It was Stoic joy in its rawest form. The refusal to let grandeur blind you to the sacredness of small things. While today's hustle culture screams that meaning lies only in milestones, promotions, viral posts, exotic vacations, the Stoics whisper a radical truth: the ordinary isn't background noise. It's the melody. Consider your morning coffee. Most days you gulp it between emails, barely tasting it. But what if, just once, you held the cup with both hands like a medieval scribe cradling an inkwell? Noticed how the steam spirals differently each time? Heard the faint tap of ceramic against your desk? That's not just drinking, it's alchemy. Seneca, who advised his friends to live immediately, wasn't urging them to chase adrenaline. He meant this: the present moment, no matter how plain, is the only place life actually happens. The billionaire's yacht and your porch swing at sunset share the same sky. The difference isn't the view, but the seeing. Modern life trains us to romanticize the extraordinary while scorning the everyday. Social media scrolls showcase highlight reels, implying that real living happens elsewhere, on mountain peaks, in crowded clubs, behind velvet ropes. The Stoics call this the poverty of attention, the delusion that significance is something to acquire rather than notice. Epictetus, who lived with just a wooden cup until he broke it to prove a point, taught that freedom comes from wanting what you already have. Not as resignation, but as revelation. That commute you dread, the rhythm of wheels on pavement, could be a meditation. The laundry pile, each folded shirt, is a silent prayer for the body that fills it. Here's your challenge today. Pick one routine act you normally rush through: brushing your teeth, tying your shoes, waiting for the elevator. Slow it down just enough to spot 3 details you've never noticed. The mint's cool sting at the back of your throat, the way your laces crisscross like Roman roads, the faint hum of machinery behind elevator doors. This isn't about adding time to your day. It's about uncovering the depth that was always there. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." feast on the mundane, and you'll never starve for wonder. The hustle culture lie is that you must escape your life to find meaning. The Stoic antidote: plunge your hands into it. That ordinary moment you're overlooking right now, the click of your keyboard, the weight of your socks, the hum of the fridge, isn't just a stepping stone to happiness. It's happiness itself, patiently waiting for you to show up. A text message pops up on your screen, just 3 words, but they send your heart racing. We need to talk. Instantly, your mind spins scenarios: a breakup, a firing, a confrontation. But here's the Stoic interruption. Wait, what did you actually see? Just black pixels forming letters. Everything else, the dread, the backstory, the imagined fallout, isn't in the message. It's in your judgment of it. Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed from a slave to a teacher of emperors, laid bare this human habit. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them. That's the discipline of assent, the practice of interrogating your knee-jerk interpretations before letting them steer your emotions. Consider how often we confuse facts with stories. Your boss emails, "See me in my office," fact, a request for presence, story. "I'm in trouble," a friend cancels plans, fact, a schedule change, story. "They're avoiding me." The gap between these is where Stoics plant their flag. Marcus Aurelius called this stripping away the legend that encrusts things. Like an archaeologist brushing dirt from an artifact, you learn to separate the event itself from the layers of meaning you've piled on top. Try this with a recent moment that unsettled you. Maybe it was a sideways glance from a coworker or a vague social media post that felt targeted. Write down exactly what happened. No adjectives, no backstory, just observable facts. Then, in another column, list the assumptions you attached. That glance could have been a contact lens irritation. That post might have been about politics, not you. The discipline of assent isn't about dismissing feelings. It's about recognizing that your first interpretation is just one possible lens, often the most self-centered or catastrophic one. Epictetus used a vivid analogy. Imagine someone hands you a coin. You inspect it, feeling its weight, testing its edge. That's how we should treat impressions, examining them before accepting their value. Most suffering comes from counterfeit judgments we accepted without scrutiny. Modern psychology confirms this with the concept of cognitive distortions, those automatic, often irrational thoughts that color our perceptions. The Stoic twist: you don't have to believe every thought that crosses your mind. Here's today's challenge. Pick one assumption you're carrying. Perhaps, my partner is distant because they're losing interest, or if I fail this project, I'll never recover. Now interrogate it like a Stoic detective. What's the evidence for and against it? What would you tell a friend who voiced this belief? Often, you'll find your initial judgment is just one story among many possible narratives. The truth isn't always comforting, but it's always lighter than the weight of unfounded fears. The discipline of assent isn't about becoming cold or unfeeling. It's about giving yourself the freedom to choose which thoughts deserve your allegiance. As Epictetus put it, don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent. That pause, that moment of examination, is where your power lies. So the next time a thought tries to hijack your peace, ask it for its credentials before letting it in. A colleague stops you after a meeting and says, "Your presentation was good, but the data felt a little shaky." Your stomach tightens. Was that constructive feedback or a veiled jab? Here's where the Stoics would lean in, not away. Seneca, who endured exile and political backstabbing, wrote, "The wounds of an enemy should be more instructive than the caresses of a friend." He wasn't glorifying cruelty, he was spotting the hidden workshop in every critique. Imagine criticism as an unpolished mirror. It might distort, but somewhere in that reflection is a truth you couldn't see on your own. Take that workplace comment, the automatic reaction, defensiveness. Maybe you mentally tally all the hours spent gathering stats, or silently blame the rushed deadline. But the Stoic pivot is simpler. Is there one grain of usefulness here, not to swallow the whole critique unquestioned, but to sift it like a prospector panning for gold? That shaky data note could mean your slides lacked clear sourcing, or that you moved too quickly through key numbers. Neither is fatal, both are fixable. Epictetus, who faced daily humiliation as a slave, trained his students to ask, "Does this criticism touch something within my control? If yes, it's fuel. If no, it's whether noticeable but not yours to change." Marcus Aurelius kept a journal entry that reframed critics as unpaid trainers. The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, in that it stands ready for what comes and is not easily thrown. Think of feedback as a sparring partner. Their jabs reveal where your guard is weak. A chef doesn't improve by only hearing delicious, just as a Stoic doesn't grow by only hearing praise. Modern psychology confirms this. Studies on stress inoculation show that moderate, constructive criticism builds resilience better than blanket approval. Here's your challenge. Recall one piece of criticism that stung: a boss's comment, a friend's observation, even an online stranger's barb. Write it down, then strip away the tone or delivery to isolate the core message. Was there a sliver of truth? Maybe that harsh review of your project highlighted a blind spot you've since fixed, or the unfair remark about your communication revealed a habit worth examining. The Stoic goal isn't to marinate in self-doubt, but to convert friction into forward motion. Seneca admitted even philosophers flinch at insults. The key is what happens next. A wound, he wrote, becomes worse if concealed. Feedback buried in resentment festers. Feedback held up to the light often reveals its value. So next time criticism lands, try the Stoic pause. Breathe, then ask, what could this teach me? You might just find the gift wrapped in sandpaper. Seneca's most piercing work wasn't about death. It was about sleepwalking through life. On the shortness of life opens with a thunderclap. It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. 2,000 years later, his words cut deeper than ever. Think of yesterday, how many hours vanished into the black hole of autopilot scrolling. How many moments slipped by while you rehearsed past conversations or fretted over future ones? The Stoic philosopher wasn't scolding. He was handing you a mirror and a lifeline. Time, he argued, is the only currency that can't be earned back. Wealth lost can be regained. Reputations repaired, but the morning you spent mindlessly refreshing your inbox, gone forever. Here's the paradox. We guard our wallets fiercely, but leak our days like sieves. Seneca painted a brutal contrast. The majority of mortals complain about the cruelty of nature because we are born for a brief span of life. Yet when you look around, you'll see how many people treat time as expendable. Ancient Rome had its own time wasters' chariot races, gossip in bathhouses, feasts that stretched into stupor. Sound familiar? Swap chariots for viral videos, bathhouses for group chats, and feasts for binge watching, and the pattern holds. The distractions change, the evasion remains. Conduct a time audit with Stoic ruthlessness. For one day, track your hours like a forensic accountant. Not just the big blocks: work, meals, sleep, but the interstitial moments. The 7 minutes spent debating which podcast to play during your commute. The 20 minutes lost down a social media rabbit hole after lunch. The evening sacrifice to reruns you're not even enjoying. Seneca's razor cuts clean. What you call lost time is actually stolen, and you're the thief. Every minute spent on what doesn't nourish your soul or serve your purpose is a minute you've filched from your own potential. Now the liberating challenge: eliminate just one time waster this week. Not with vague intentions like "I'll scroll less," but with surgical precision. I'll delete the shopping app that tempts me into midnight browsing. I'll set a 10-minute timer for news updates instead of grazing headlines all afternoon. The Stoic goal isn't austerity, it's reclamation. That reclaimed hour could become the space where you finally start the novel, learn the language, or restore the neglected friendship. Seneca's ultimate insight: you've always had enough time. The shortage is an illusion created by misallocation. Life is long if you know how to use it, he wrote. Not in frantic accumulation, but in deliberate investment. So tonight, as you lie in bed, ask not just "What did I do today?" but "What did today do to me?" The answer will measure not just your hours, but your life. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, made a radical claim for his time: neglecting your body isn't just unhealthy, it's immoral. How can someone who doesn't care for their own flesh properly care for anything else? He demanded. This wasn't ancient biohacking, it was philosophy in motion. Picture him lecturing Roman elites not in a marble hall, but while chopping wood, demonstrating that wisdom isn't cultivated through idle debate alone, but through sweaty, calloused hands. The Stoics saw physical vitality not as vanity, but as virtuous responsibility. Your body isn't a temple to worship, it's a tool to maintain, like a blacksmith's hammer or a sailor's compass. Let it rust and you compromise your capacity to serve, to think clearly, to meet life's demands. Epictetus, who walked with a limp from his years in slavery, put it plainly: you are a little soul carrying around a corpse. His point wasn't to degrade the body, but to highlight its transient nature, and thus the urgency of stewarding it well while you can. Modern culture oscillates between punishing fitness regimens and couch-bound indulgence. The Stoic path: steady, mindful maintenance, not six-pack abs for Instagram, but functional strength to carry groceries, play with grandchildren, or endure a crisis without collapsing. Think of Marcus Aurelius rising before dawn for wrestling practice, not to impress, but to prepare, because an emperor who couldn't march with his troops would lose their respect. This translates strikingly to today: that runner's high you feel after a jog. Stoics would recognize it as the joy of aligned action, when body and will cooperate. The discipline of meal prep, not diet culture, but the practical wisdom that greasy takeout clouds your mind while wholesome food sharpens it. Even modern science confirms the Stoic hunch: regular exercise boosts neuroplasticity, while processed foods trigger inflammation linked to depression. The body isn't separate from the mind, it's the mind's first environment. Here's your challenge today: move not for calories burned, but for consciousness gained. Walk without headphones and notice how your feet connect with the ground. Lift weights with attention to breathe rather than counting reps, or try Musonius's favorite test: hard physical labor. Rake leaves, scrub floors, or split wood until sweat blurs your vision. There's Stoic clarity in muscle fatigue, a reminder that your body is neither master nor slave, but partner. As Epictetus advised, don't you know life is like a military campaign? You must stand guard over your poor body without indulging it. Not denial, but disciplined care, because the stronger the vessel, the farther the soul can sail. You've spent weeks planning the perfect beach getaway, flights booked, itinerary packed with snorkeling and sunset dinners. Then, 24 hours before departure, a storm cancels every flight. Your stomach drops, all that anticipation wasted. But here's the Stoic pivot: what if, from the very beginning, you'd whispered 2 words after every plan? Fate permitting, Marcus Aurelius, who constantly adjusted battle strategies as emperor, wrote, "The art of living is more like wrestling than dancing, because an alert and firm stance is demanded of you to meet every attack and onslaught of fortune." Notice he didn't say if fortune attacks, he said when. The reserve clause adding, "fate permitting" to every plan isn't about pessimism. It's about preemptively loosening your grip on outcomes you never truly controlled in the first place. Take that cancelled trip. Without the reserve clause, the disappointment feels personal, like the universe singled you out. With it, the storm was always a possibility. You packed your swimsuit, fate permitting. You researched coral reefs, fate permitting. This subtle mental shift transforms frustration into a shrug. We'll reschedule. The ancient Stoics called this hypolepsis, the practice of holding plans lightly. Seneca, who famously said, "All plans are subject to the veto of fortune," would schedule backup days for his writing projects, knowing interruptions were inevitable. Modern psychology confirms this approach. Studies on mental contrasting show that visualizing both success and potential obstacles increases follow-through and reduces stress when plans change. Here's how to practice it today. Pick one upcoming commitment, a weekend barbecue, a work presentation, even your morning coffee ritual. Say it aloud, then tack on, "fate permitting." That coffee date, "I'll meet Sarah at the cafe at 9, fate permitting." The webinar you're hosting, it goes live at 2, fate permitting. This isn't jinxing your plans, it's vaccinating them against disappointment. Epictetus, who began life as a slave and thus knew better than most how little control we truly have, advised, "Don't demand that events happen as you wish, but wish them to happen as they do." Now the deeper layer, the reserve clause isn't just about external events, it's about internal flexibility. That project you're obsessing over, "I'll finish the proposal by Friday, fate permitting, and if not, I'll adapt." The diet you're rigidly following, "I'll skip dessert tonight, fate permitting, and if I cave, I'll recalibrate tomorrow." This builds resilience not just to cancelled flights, but to the daily mini betrayals of life. Your kid gets sick before the big meeting. Your car won't start on gym day. These aren't failures of planning. They're reminders that control was always an illusion. Try this tonight. Review tomorrow's to-do list and pencil in FP beside each item. Not as defeatism, but as liberation. The Stoics didn't avoid making plans. They avoided conflating plans with promises. As Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal, "When you wake up, tell yourself, 'Today I'll meet interference, ingratitude, and disruption. None of these things can alter my choice to act with justice and purpose.'" The storm doesn't decide whether you enjoy your day, your flexibility does. So go ahead, plan fiercely, but hold those plans like sand, not stone. The tide will always have the final say. Waiting in line at the DMV, stuck in bumper-to-bumper traffic, watching a loading bar crawl toward completion, modern life bombards us with delays that feel like personal affronts. Yet Epictetus, the Stoic philosopher who endured slavery before teaching emperors, offered a startling reframe. What upsets people is not things themselves, but their judgments about these things. That slow-moving queue isn't stealing your time. It's revealing your relationship with time itself. The Stoics didn't just tolerate waiting, they mined it for mastery. Consider the last time impatience hijacked your peace. Maybe you tapped your foot violently while the microwave counted down, or refreshed your inbox every 12 seconds awaiting a reply. Beneath that restlessness lies an unexamined belief. This delay shouldn't be happening, but the Stoics would ask, says who? Nature's rhythm includes tides that can't be rushed, crops that won't be hurried, and yes, traffic lights that change on their own schedule. Patience isn't passive resignation. It's the active recognition that some forces operate beyond your command. Marcus Aurelius, who governed an empire amid endless bureaucratic delays, wrote in his journal, "When you're forced by circumstances to be disturbed, quickly return to yourself. Don't stay out of rhythm longer than necessary." That's the secret, not eliminating weights, but shortening the mental spiral they trigger. Modern neuroscience validates this. The stress of impatience doesn't come from the delay itself, but from the cortisol surge triggered by our resistance to it. The person next to you in traffic might be listening to an audiobook, relaxed, while you white-knuckle the wheel. Same circumstance, wildly different experiences. Here's how to practice Stoic patience today. Pick one inevitable delay: a slow elevator, a laggy app update, a doctor's office wait, and approach it as a laboratory for calm. When irritation bubbles up, hear Epictetus whisper, "This is happening." Is your frustration improving it? Use the pause to notice 3 sensory details you'd normally miss: the hum of fluorescent lights, the pattern of tiles on the floor, the rhythm of your own breath. What feels like wasted time becomes found space for presence, reflection, or simple stillness. The ultimate test: voluntary discomfort. Seneca would deliberately visit crowded markets to practice staying serene amid jostling and noise. Try it next time you spot the shortest coffee line. Choose the longest instead. Not as self-punishment, but as training. You'll discover that patience isn't something you have, it's something you prove to yourself, one inconvenient moment at a time. The queue eventually ends, the strength you gain from standing in it remains. Seneca once warned that we become like those we spend our time with, not gradually, but inevitably. Picture a piece of wool dipped in purple dye. It doesn't debate whether to absorb the color, it simply does. Your social circle works the same way. The Stoics weren't just suggesting you avoid toxic people. They were insisting you recognize how every conversation, every shared complaint, every laugh at someone's expense seeps into your character like dye into fabric. Marcus Aurelius kept a mental checklist of traits he'd borrowed from mentors, but the inverse is also true. We unconsciously adopt the cynicism of the colleague who grumbles daily, the short temper of the friend who's always outraged, the apathy of the group that dismisses growth as pointless. Consider 2 types of relationships: those that drain and those that elevate. A draining interaction leaves you feeling smaller, perhaps the friend who subtly undermines your goals with realistic warnings, or the coworker who turns every lunch into a grievance session. An elevating one, that's the person who asks questions that stretch your thinking, who celebrates your discipline more than your victories, who models calm in chaos without preaching. Seneca wrote letters to his friend Lucilius not just to teach, but to stay sharpened by their exchange. When you're alone, you're with the common herd. Even solitude is shaped by who you've internalized. Try this audit. List the 5 people you've spent the most time with this month. Next to each name, jot down the dominant emotion or mindset you associate with them. Not who they are at their best, but the energy they consistently bring. Does their presence expand or shrink your sense of possibility? Do you leave conversations feeling lighter or heavier? The Stoics weren't advocating ruthless cuts, but conscious curation. That cousin who's always in crisis, maybe you limit dinners but keep phone calls. The colleague who radiates curiosity, schedule more coffee chats. Here's the twist: uplifting relationships aren't just about positivity. Epictetus, who endured slavery, valued companions who challenged him as much as comforted him. A true Stoic ally isn't someone who always agrees, but who holds you accountable to your own principles. Imagine a friend who calls out your excuses without contempt, or the mentor who points out blind spots with care. These are the people Seneca meant when he said, "Friendship always benefits, love sometimes injures." Your challenge today is simple but profound. Reach out to one person who embodies the traits you want to strengthen in yourself. not with fanfare, but with genuine connection. Maybe it's the old teacher whose patience you admire, or the friend who reinvents herself without apology. Send a voice note, a handwritten note, or even sit quietly recalling their influence. Relationships are the invisible architecture of your character. Build wisely. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, once quipped, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we can listen twice as much as we speak." That simple observation cuts to the heart of a skill modern life has nearly erased: the art of silence as active strength, not passive absence. Picture a typical team meeting: voices overlap, eyes dart to phones. Everyone waits for their turn to talk rather than truly hear. Now imagine the Stoic alternative: leaning in with full attention, letting words land without mentally rehearsing your rebuttal, noticing not just what's said but what's left unsaid. This isn't just manners, it's mastery. Epictetus taught that listening without ego is the ultimate test of self-discipline. If someone tells you that so and so speaks ill of you, don't defend yourself but reply, "He must not know my other faults, or he wouldn't have mentioned only these." Consider how rarely we experience undivided attention. A friend shares exciting news while you half listen, already composing your enthusiastic response. A partner vents about their day as you nod mechanically, distracted by dinner plans. The Stoics saw this as a double theft: you rob others of feeling understood while robbing yourself of the chance to learn. Seneca observed that even wise men could sit through entire lectures without gaining anything because their minds were turned toward the reply they were about to make. Modern neuroscience confirms this. When we're preoccupied, our brains physically filter out incoming information. Real listening requires surrendering the urge to perform, to impress, or to control the narrative. Try this today for 10 minutes. Practice Stoic silence. In your next conversation, focus solely on understanding rather than responding. Notice the speaker's posture, the cadence of their voice, the emotions flickering beneath their words. When the urge to interrupt arises, and it will treat it like a weightlifting rep for your patience. Epictetus compared training in philosophy to training in wrestling. You must practice keeping your stance even when caught off guard. Deep listening trains that same poise. You'll discover gaps in conversations where wisdom hides the pause before someone admits doubt, the sigh masked by a joke. The true test comes when you hear something that triggers defensiveness. Maybe it's criticism of your work or a political view you oppose. Here's the Stoic pivot. Instead of constructing counterarguments, ask clarifying questions. What makes you feel that way? Or can you share an example? This doesn't mean agreeing blindly. It means gathering data before forming judgments. Marcus Aurelius kept a journal reminder. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? Most of our reactive speech wouldn't pass that test. Silence to the Stoics wasn't empty space, it was fertile ground. Like a farmer letting fields lie fallow to restore nutrients, intentional quiet cultivates richer connections and sharper insights. Start small. Tomorrow, drink your coffee without podcasts. Sit through a work presentation without checking your watch. Let a child's rambling story unfold without redirecting it. Each act of restraint strengthens what Epictetus called the inner citadel, the unshakable core no chatter can penetrate. The world shouts, the wise lean in, ears open, mouth at rest, discovering that some of life's loudest truths come whispered. Imagine watching yourself from the ceiling during an argument. Your flushed face, the sharp gestures, the rising volume, as if you're a neutral observer rather than a participant. That's the Stoic third-person perspective, a mental maneuver Marcus Aurelius used to diffuse his own frustrations as emperor. He wrote, "Imagine every man who is grieved or angry to be like a pig kicking and squealing under sacrifice." Graphic, absolutely, but it captures the raw power of this practice. stepping outside your own drama to see it with clear-eyed detachment. Take a moment you've likely experienced. Someone cuts you off in traffic. Instinct pulls you toward the horn, the curse, the white-knuckled grip on the wheel. Now shift the camera angle. Picture yourself as a stranger watching that scene unfold. How would you judge the person in the car? Would their outrage seem proportional or slightly ridiculous? That's the pivot. The Stoics weren't suggesting you suppress emotion. They were offering a tool to interrogate whether your reaction serves you. Epictetus, who endured slavery's ultimate lack of control, taught that it's not events that disturb us, but our interpretation of them. The third-person view exposes those interpretations like an X-ray. Here's why it works neurologically. When you mentally distance yourself, you engage the prefrontal cortex, your brain's rational center, instead of letting the amygdala hijack your behavior. Studies show that people who visualize conflicts from an observer's perspective reach resolutions faster and with less hostility. Marcus Aurelius practiced this daily, scribbling reminders like, "Look at things as if seeing them for the first or last time." That zoomed-out lens shrinks pettiness and amplifies what truly matters. Try this today. Recall a recent irritation, a snippy email, a long wait in line, a household chore ignored by your partner. Now replay it in your mind's eye as if you're watching two actors in a film. Notice how the camera changes the emotional charge. The email isn't personal, it's just pixels on a screen. The waiting isn't an insult, it's universal human experience. The chore, a trivial blip in the arc of a relationship. The details don't vanish, they just lose their fangs. The magic lies in the pause this creates. Like a referee reviewing instant replay, you gain space to ask, does this deserve my energy? Often the answer is no. Other times you'll spot legitimate hurts that warrant calm discussion rather than reactive fury. Either way, you're no longer drowning in the wave, you're the lifeguard on the shore, deciding whether to dive in or let it pass. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire with this discipline. You can rule your inner world with it too. Next time emotion threatens to override reason, hit the mental zoom out button. Watch the scene unfold from the balcony, not the dance floor. The storm might still rage, but you'll be the one holding the umbrella. Your calendar is a battlefield. Every yes is a surrender of time, energy, and peace. Epictetus, the philosopher who transformed from a slave to a teacher of kings, saw this clearly. If you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential. That's the Stoic no, and not a rejection of others, but a fierce affirmation of your own sovereignty. Picture this, you're already stretched thin between work deadlines and family obligations when a colleague asks you to lead yet another volunteer committee. Your stomach knots, but you hear yourself saying, "Sure, I'll make it work." That's not generosity, it's self-betrayal disguised as kindness. The Stoics weren't against helping others, they were against helping at the expense of your integrity. Marcus Aurelius, who shouldered the weight of an empire, wrote in his private journal, "It's not that you have little time, but that you waste much of it." Every yes to something unimportant is a no to something vital. Your health, your growth, your quiet moments of reflection. Think of your energy as a lantern with limited oil. If you keep lighting paths for others while neglecting your own, soon you'll all be left in darkness. Here's the litmus test. When a request lands, ask Epictetus's question, is this within my sphere of control? Not just logistically, but morally. Can you truly serve this cause without resentment or exhaustion? If not, decline with the same clarity you'd want from others. The modern world confuses busyness with virtue, but the Stoics knew better. Seneca turned down prestigious appointments to preserve time for writing and teaching, explaining, A life is only as valuable as what it consistently honors. Your challenge this week: decline one request that doesn't align with your core priorities. Not with excuses or half-truths, but with dignified simplicity. I can't commit to that right now. Watch what happens. The sky won't fall. Colleagues will adapt, friends will understand, and you'll rediscover a truth the Stoics carved into their daily practice. Boundaries aren't walls. They're the gates through which your best self enters the world. Gold doesn't fear the furnace, it needs it. That's the image Seneca used when he wrote, "Fire tests gold, suffering tests brave men." 2,000 years later, the principle holds. Adversity isn't just something to endure, it's the very process that reveals and forges your strength. Think of a blacksmith's hammer. To the untrained eye, every strike seems destructive, but the metal knows better. Each blow isn't breaking it down, it's shaping it into something harder, sharper, more resilient. The Stoics didn't just tolerate hardship, they recognized it as the curriculum of an unshakable mind. Consider a career setback. Maybe you were passed over for a promotion you'd earned, or a project you poured your soul into was abruptly cancelled. In the moment, it feels like a dead end, but here's what the Stoics saw that most miss. Comfort rarely teaches us half as much as loss, that promotion snub. It might reveal blind spots in your leadership style you'd never noticed. The failed project, it could strip away naive assumptions and force you to innovate. Seneca, exiled to Corsica's barren shores, turned his banishment into a creative crucible, writing letters that would outlive Rome itself. The flames that seemed designed to destroy him were the very ones that purified his purpose. Here's the practice. Look back at a past struggle that left you wiser. Not the one you've already reframed as a blessing in disguise, but the raw wound you're still reluctant to touch. Maybe it was a betrayal that made trust feel impossible, or a failure that shook your identity. Now ask Seneca's question: what did this reveal about me that ease never could? A musician might realize their worst performance taught them more about stage presence than 100 flawless rehearsals. A parent might see that their child's rebellion exposed their own need for control. The gift of adversity isn't just resilience, it's the unflinching mirror it holds up to our illusions. Modern psychology calls this post-traumatic growth, but the Stoics framed it more starkly. Suffering is the tuition we pay for wisdom. Marcus Aurelius scribbled in his journal during a plague-ridden military campaign, "The obstacle in the path becomes the path, that cancelled project." It might have saved you from a career path that didn't align with your values. That heartbreak, it could have spared you a lifetime of superficial connections. The Stoic shift happens when you stop asking, "Why did this happen to me?" and start asking, "What is this preparing me for?" Your challenge isn't to pretend adversity feels good, it's to mine it for its hidden curriculum. Tonight, light a candle and name one fire that tested you. Not the one you've already neatly packaged as a lesson, but the one that still smolders. Then whisper Seneca's truth: this flame wasn't your destruction. It was your refinement. The proof isn't in the heat you felt, but in the metal you gained. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "Confine yourself to the present, while ruling an empire in chaos." 2,000 years later, this simple command feels almost revolutionary, not because it's profound, but because we've built a world that makes presence nearly impossible. Think about your morning. Maybe you scrolled news while sipping coffee, half listened to a podcast while commuting, and checked emails during lunch. We call this efficiency. The Stoics called it slavery. Their philosophy wasn't about passively watching sunsets, it was about reclaiming your attention from the constant hijacking of modern life. Consider multitasking, that badge of honor we wear like armor. Science confirms what the Stoics intuited. Your brain doesn't actually juggle tasks, it toggles between them, each switch burning glucose and eroding focus. A Stanford study found heavy multitaskers performed worse on cognitive tests than their single-tasking peers. Why? Because divided attention is diluted attention. Marcus Aurelius meditated on this while governing Rome. Do every act of your life as if it were your last, not with morbid dread, but with the precision of a sculptor carving marble, one deliberate stroke at a time. Here's the experiment. Try a tech-free hour today, not as a digital detox, but as a Stoic drill in sovereignty. Turn off notifications, set your phone aside, and do one thing fully. Wash dishes and notice the warmth of water, the rhythm of scrubbing. Walk without headphones and hear the crunch of leaves underfoot. At first, your mind will rebel like a caged animal craving distraction. That restlessness is the addiction talking. The Stoics knew this tension well. Epictetus compared training the mind to breaking a wild horse. First it fights, then it yields, then it carries you where you wish to go. The magic happens in the mundane. A parent reading to a child without mentally drafting work emails tastes the sweetness of undivided connection. A gardener pulling weeds without intrusive thoughts spots the ladybug on a stem. These aren't just moments, they're acts of rebellion against a culture that profits from your fragmentation. Seneca warned, life is long enough if you know how to use it, not by cramming more in, but by letting each experience imprint deeply. Your challenge today isn't to add another habit, but to subtract the noise. Pick one routine act: folding laundry, drinking tea, shaking a colleague's hand, and do it with your whole self. Not for productivity, but for proof that the richest moments aren't found in the extraordinary, but in the ordinary, fully inhabited. As Marcus scribbled in his journal by candlelight, now is all you own. The rest is promises or regrets. The present moment isn't a pit stop between tasks, it's the only place life ever happens. Meet it there. A CEO cutting in line at a coffee shop, a celebrity snapping fingers at waitstaff, a politician dismissing a janitor's greeting. These aren't just breaches of etiquette, but failures of philosophy. Epictetus, the former slave who became Stoicism's most influential teacher, leveled the playing field with 9 words: "You are a little soul carrying around a corpse." That jarring image wasn't meant to degrade the body, but to highlight our shared fragility. Beneath titles, wealth, and social masks, every human is a temporary arrangement of stardust and stories. The barrister who misspells your name, the Uber driver taking a wrong turn, the customer service rep reading from a script, they're not background characters in your story. They're protagonists in their own equally complex narratives, fighting battles you'll never see. Consider your last interaction with someone in a service role. Did you truly see them or just their function? Stoic humility begins with recognizing that no amount of status alters our fundamental equality in the face of chaos. Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in the ancient world, reminded himself daily, Alexander the Great and his mule driver both died. The same fate awaits us all. That Memento Mori perspective shrinks ego like nothing else. The executive rushing through the airport is no closer to cheating death than the TSA agent scanning her bag. The influencer with millions of followers will one day be as forgotten as the Roman street vendors whose names history never recorded. This isn't about suppressing ambition, it's about grounding achievement in awareness. Picture 2 scenarios in one. A lawyer sighs impatiently as a grocery cashier fumbles with a coupon. In the other, that same lawyer pauses, notices the cashier's tired eyes and name tag, Maria, training since Tuesday, and says, "No rush, long day, huh?" The transaction takes identical time, but the second version acknowledges shared humanity. The Stoics called this sympatheia, the interconnectedness of all rational beings. When Zeno founded Stoicism in Athens' painted colonnade, he taught that every person contains a spark of Zeus, the same divine reason that animates the cosmos. Your soul isn't inherently worthier than the soul of the person bagging your groceries. Here's today's challenge. Choose 3 routine interactions where societal roles normally dictate behavior. Maybe ordering food, passing through security, or receiving a delivery. For each one, add one humanizing gesture. Call the receptionist by the name on her desk plate. Ask the bus driver how his route's been today, or simply make full eye contact when saying thank you to the cleaning staff. These aren't grand acts of charity, they're corrections to the illusion of hierarchy. The Stoic goal isn't to eliminate distinctions, but to see through them. As Epictetus quipped, when someone boasts of their public honors, remember that the applause belongs to the office, not the person. The test comes when others don't reciprocate your respect. A waiter is rude, a clerk rolls their eyes, a stranger cuts you off. Here's the Stoic pivot: their behavior reflects their inner weather, not your worth. Marcus Aurelius dealt with senators who mocked his frugality and generals who resented his authority. His journal holds the antidote. When people injure you, ask yourself, what good or harm did they see in it? If you understand that, you'll feel sympathy rather than anger. That shift, from taking offense to seeking understanding, is the alchemy of humility. Tonight, as you review your day, ask not just what you accomplished, but how you acknowledged the invisible souls who made your life possible. The electricity flowing to your home, the roads carrying your car, the ancestors whose labor built the world you inherited, none were created in isolation. Stoic equality isn't about pretending differences don't exist. It's about remembering they don't ultimately matter. Marcus Aurelius once stood on the banks of the Danube River, watching its currents merge with tributaries, and wrote in his journal, "Everything is interwoven and the web is holy." That observation wasn't poetry, it was physics. The Stoics didn't just respect nature, they saw it as the ultimate operating manual for human flourishing. Their entire ethical system was built on one radical premise: you are not a visitor on this planet, but a single thread in its living fabric. When Zeno taught under Athens' painted colonnade, he didn't separate philosophy from meteorology, astronomy, or the migration patterns of birds. To understand virtue, you first had to understand how waves break, why seasons turn, and what fire teaches about transformation. Consider how modern science echoes this ancient insight. Quantum entanglement shows particles influencing each other across vast distances. Ecology proves how altering one species affects entire ecosystems. The Stoics called this sympatheia the interdependence of all things. Marcus Aurelius expanded it further. What benefits the hive benefits the bee. Your well-being isn't separate from the tree outside your window, the quality of air in your city, or the health of soil that grows your food. When you dump toxins into a river, you're not harming some distant environment. You're poisoning your own bloodstream at one remove. Here's where Stoicism collides with modern eco-consciousness in unexpected ways. The plastic wrapper you toss today doesn't just clutter a landfill. It violates the Stoic discipline of desire by prioritizing momentary convenience over systemic responsibility. Epictetus framed it as a matter of self-respect. Is freedom anything else than the right to live as we wish? We don't wish to live in filth. The modern tragedy is that we've been conditioned to see sustainability as sacrifice when the Stoics reveal it as alignment. A thrifty lifestyle isn't deprivation, it's training to want what nourishes the whole. Try this experiment today. Spend 15 minutes observing any natural process, the methodical march of ants, the way clouds dissolve into blue, or even the slow unfurling of a houseplant's leaves. Don't just glance, study. Notice how roots know exactly when to seek water, how birds conserve energy by drafting off each other's flight, how decay feeds new growth. The Stoics saw these patterns as ethical instruction. A forest doesn't hoard sunlight, it filters it through canopies so seedlings may thrive. Rivers don't resent the stones that divert them, they adapt and flow. Nature's genius lies in its economy, its resilience, its relentless recycling of energy. Your apartment balcony or suburban yard holds the same lessons. That basil plant wilting on your windowsill, it's not failing, it's communicating. The spider weaving its web in your garage corner isn't an intruder, it's a masterclass in patience and precision. Modern life has taught us to see nature as scenery. The Stoics challenge us to recognize it as the original curriculum. When Seneca wrote, "Follow nature," he wasn't suggesting wilderness retreats. He meant align your choices with the same intelligence that balances ecosystems and spins planets. Tonight, as you walk from your car to your front door, pause, look up. The stars above your head are the same ones Marcus Aurelius contemplated when he whispered, "The cosmos is change, life is understanding." Every atom in your body was forged in some ancient supernova. You don't inhabit the universe, you are its momentary shape. Breathe accordingly. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who shaped Epictetus, didn't just lecture on ethics, he insisted his students cook their own meals. Not for culinary flair, but for connection. How can one who neglects nourishment claim to care for the soul? He challenged. Picture this, a Roman nobleman, accustomed to slaves delivering trays of roasted peacock and honeyed wine, sweating over a simple pot of lentils under Musonius's watchful eye. The lesson wasn't about austerity, it was about awareness. Every bite to the Stoics was a moral act, not because food itself was virtuous or sinful, but because how we eat reveals our relationship with desire, patience, and our own bodies. Modern diets swing between extremes, gluttony masquerading as celebration, restriction disguised as discipline. Social media floods us with contradictory messages. Indulge. You deserve it versus detox, shrink your waistline. The Stoics would dismiss both as distractions. To them, the question wasn't, "What should I eat?" but "Why am I eating?" Seneca fasted regularly not to lose weight, but to remember that hunger is the best source. By voluntarily experiencing emptiness, he rediscovered the miracle of satiety. Contrast that with today's mindless scrolling through delivery apps while watching TV, barely tasting the food we've ordered out of habit rather than hunger. Mindful eating, a buzzword in wellness circles today, was Stoic practice 2,000 years ago. Epictetus advised chewing slowly to notice textures, to pause between bites, to stop before fullness became discomfort. Is the purpose of food to fill a void or fuel a life? He'd ask. Imagine applying that at your next meal. The chicken on your plate isn't just protein, it's sunlight converted to grain, grain fed to a bird, a farmer's labor, a cook's care. To eat without acknowledging this chain is to live half asleep. The Stoics didn't say grace, they practiced gratitude by attentiveness. Here's your challenge, choose one meal today, breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and turn it into a meditation. No screens, no multitasking, no rushing. Notice the crunch of toast, the way steam rises from soup, the sour tang of yogurt on your tongue. When your mind wanders to tomorrow's meeting or yesterday's argument, gently return it to the act of nourishment. You'll likely discover something startling. Hunger wasn't just in your stomach, but in your distracted mind. The Stoic diet isn't a meal plan. It's the art of meeting a basic need without letting it own you. Musonius took it further. He believed preparing your own food, even clumsily, was an act of self-reliance. A philosopher's hands should smell of onions, he declared. You needn't become a chef, but try this: chop vegetables without listening to a podcast. Knead dough without checking your phone. In a world where meal kits arrive pre-chopped and algorithms suggest what we crave before we feel it, the simple act of peeling a potato can be rebellion. The patience to watch water boil, the restraint to take portions that honor both body and earth, the humility to eat leftovers without resentment, these are Stoic virtues served daily on an ordinary plate. The next time you reach for a snack, pause. Ask Epictetus's question: is this for strength or for stuffing? Not to judge, but to awaken. That chocolate isn't evil, but devouring it without tasting it is a tiny tragedy. The Stoics didn't demonize pleasure, they sanctified presence. So tonight, let your fork be your teacher. The first bite savored fully is worth more than a feast swallowed in haste. The crack of dawn isn't just a time, it's a blank slate for discipline. Epictetus, the philosopher who turned hardship into wisdom, put it bluntly: first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That's the alchemy of routine. Small, repeated actions forge character like a blacksmith's hammer shapes molten iron. Picture two people waking at the same hour. One grabs their phone and drowns in emails before their feet hit the floor. The other sits in silence for 5 minutes, reflecting on what's within their control. Both are building something, but only one is constructing resilience. Consider the anatomy of a Stoic morning. No grand gestures required, just deliberate choices stacking like bricks. Water before coffee, 3 breaths before speaking, a single sentence in a journal: today I control only my effort. These aren't tasks, they're rehearsals for life's chaos. When Marcus Aurelius ruled Rome, he began his days writing reminders like, "You'll meet annoying people today," not to breed cynicism, but to anchor himself before storms hit. Modern science confirms the power of such rituals. Studies show that consistent morning routines reduce decision fatigue and boost emotional regulation. The Stoics didn't know about cortisol spikes, but they knew this: chaos bows to order. Here's where most habit advice fails. It focuses on the what: drink lemon water, meditate, exercise, but Stoicism digs deeper into the why. Epictetus warned, no habit is too small to ignore, for it's the threads of habit that weave the tapestry of character. That midday scroll through social media, it's training distraction. The evening complaint session about work, it's rehearsing victimhood. Conversely, the 5 minutes you spend reviewing mistakes without self-flagellation, that's sculpting wisdom. Your challenge isn't to overhaul your life overnight. It's to insert one intentional thread into your daily pattern. Start with a doorway pause. When you cross a threshold, mentally name one virtue you'll embody in that space. Entering your office, patience. Stepping into your home, presence. This isn't about perfection, it's about awareness. Like a gardener tending seedlings, you're cultivating conditions for growth, one deliberate action at a time. The Stoics didn't build Rome in a day, they built it brick by brick, habit by habit. Your mind is your empire. How will you lay the next stone? Marcus Aurelius described the mind as an inner citadel, a fortress where your truest self resides, untouched by external chaos. Picture the thick stone walls of a medieval castle, shielding its inhabitants from invading armies. Now imagine that same impenetrable strength within you, guarding your peace against life's sieges. The criticism that stings, the setbacks that knock the wind from your lungs, the noise of a world that never stops demanding your attention. Seneca called it the soul's impregnable fortress, a place where no insult can breach the gates and no misfortune can topple the towers. This isn't about building walls to hide from life. It's about creating a sanctuary so secure that you can engage with the world without being overthrown by it. Consider a paramedic in the aftermath of a disaster amidst the sirens and shattered glass. Their hands don't shake as they triage the wounded. Their training has drilled this truth deep: panic saves no one. That steady pulse beneath the chaos, that's the inner citadel in action. The Stoics argued that we all face our own versions of emergencies, betrayals, financial collapses, health scares, and our survival hinges not on avoiding them, but on having a psychological stronghold to retreat to when the ground gives way. Epictetus, who knew true powerlessness as a slave, put it bluntly: "You're not hurt by what happens, but by your opinion of it. The citadel is where you reclaim that power of interpretation." Here's how to lay your foundation stones. Start by identifying your non-negotiables, the principles you wouldn't abandon even if the world applauded you for it. For Marcus Aurelius, it was integrity. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. For you, it might be honesty even when lies are convenient, kindness even when others are cruel, or perseverance even when results aren't guaranteed. Write them down like a constitution for your soul. These become the bedrock no storm can erode. Now test it. Imagine losing your job tomorrow. The initial shock might rattle the windows, but inside the citadel, your core remains: I adapt. I create. I am not defined by a title, or picture a relationship fracturing. The pain is real, but the fortress stands. I am worthy of respect. I will not beg for crumbs of affection. This isn't denial, it's the art of distinguishing between what happens to you and who you choose to be in response. Seneca survived exile, betrayal, and Nero's tyranny by retreating to this inner sanctum. "The soul must be hardened like steel in fire," he wrote. "Your trials aren't punishments, they're the forge that tempers your resolve. So tonight, light a candle and ask, what are my unbendable truths?" Not the values you post online, but the ones you'd cling to in the dark. That list is your citadel's blueprint. Build it well, and no chaos can unhouse you. Imagine lighting a candle from another flame. The first light isn't diminished. The room grows brighter. That's the paradox of wisdom. The more you give it away, the more you truly own it. Seneca captured this beautifully in his letters. While we teach, we learn. He wasn't just talking about classroom lectures. He meant that the act of explaining an idea forces you to examine it more deeply, to fortify it against questions, to make it your own in a way passive consumption never achieves. This is why the 42nd and final Stoic habit isn't about acquiring more knowledge, but about completing the cycle, passing on what you've gathered, like a relay runner handing off the baton. Think about the last time you tried to explain a concept to someone else. Maybe it was a coworker struggling with a new software tool, or a child asking why the sky is blue. In that moment, you didn't just regurgitate facts, you sorted through your understanding, found analogies, and clarified fuzzy edges you hadn't noticed before. The Stoics believed this process was sacred. Epictetus, who taught in a dusty Athenian courtyard, didn't see himself as a dispenser of truth, but as a midwife helping students give birth to their own realizations. His most famous student, Arion, later wrote down his teachings, creating the discourses that would inspire Marcus Aurelius centuries later. The chain of wisdom only continues because someone took the time to pass it forward. Here's how to practice this today. Choose one insight from this video that resonated with you. Maybe it was the view from above or the discipline of ascent, and share it with someone in your life. Not as a lecture, but as a conversation starter. Say, "I heard this idea about focusing only on what we can control. What do you think?" You'll likely find the discussion sharpens your own grasp of the concept. The Stoics called this synchetathesis, the act of testing and refining your beliefs through dialogue. But teaching doesn't require a classroom. Marcus Aurelius never intended his meditations to be published. He was teaching his future self. Your journal entries, your quiet reflections, even the way you model calm in a crisis, these are all lessons the world absorbs. When you pause before reacting to a provocation, you're not just practicing self-control, you're giving others permission to do the same. Stoicism, at its core, is contagious resilience. So as we close these 42 habits, here's your final challenge. Scroll back through this video and pick one idea that feels like yours now. Then in the comments, share it in your own words, not to impress, but to solidify it within you. Because the true measure of wisdom isn't what you've absorbed, but what you've set free. The candle waits, the room could use your light. So here we stand, 42 habits laid out like stepping stones across the river of daily life. But don't let the number overwhelm you. Stoicism was never about checking every box or achieving flawless discipline. It's about showing up stone by stone, even when the current tries to pull you under. Think of mental fortitude as a mosaic. Each small practice, from morning reflection to voluntary discomfort, is a single tessera. Alone, it might seem insignificant. But together, they form an unshakable picture of resilience. Marcus Aurelius didn't wake up one day with the wisdom of an emperor philosopher. He built it sentence by sentence in his journal, crisis by crisis on the battlefield. Epictetus, the former slave who became Stoicism's most practical teacher, left us a compass for this journey. Progress is not achieved by luck or accident, but by working on yourself daily. Notice he didn't say perfection, he said progress. Some days your work might be as simple as pausing before reacting to a rude comment. Other days, it's choosing gratitude when plans collapse. What matters isn't the scale of the act, but the consistency of the practice. Like a blacksmith's hammer shaping hot iron, repetition transforms effort into enduring strength. Now here's the invitation. Don't try to swallow all 42 habits at once. That's a recipe for burnout, not growth. Instead, pick 2 or 3 that resonate most. Maybe it's the evening journal review to unwind the day's knots, or the view from above to shrink pettiness into perspective. Stack them like kindling. Light one small habit, let it catch, then add another. The Stoics didn't demand grand gestures. They honored the cumulative power of tiny, daily choices. As we wrap up, imagine Seneca blowing out his oil lamp after writing those timeless letters, not with a flourish, but with the quiet certainty that tomorrow would bring another chance to practice. That's the gift of Stoicism. Every sunrise is a fresh invitation to refine your character. If this exploration sparked something in you, consider subscribing. Our community isn't about elitism or jargon. It's a campfire where we share tools to build lives of purpose and peace. Remember, the path to mental fortitude isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. You'll revisit the same lessons at deeper levels, each time with a little more clarity, a little more grit. So take a breath, pick your first stone, and step forward. The water's cold, but the other shore is